I got it. That's all I got. I hope Raphael said great things because I do not know what he said about me. I'm very excited to be here in Brazil and to talk to you all about what I am very, very passionate about, which is product management. How many product managers do we have here? Yes, my people. Amazing. So today I'm going to talk to you about something that I think companies get into a habit of doing, which is called the build trap, and how we as product managers can actually escape that. So when I started out as a product manager, I didn't know what it was. I came to a company and I said, I studied engineering, but I don't really want to code. I really like design. I was doing lots of Photoshop. What can I do? And they said, you can be a product manager. I went, okay. What's that? What does that mean? And they said, well, your job is going to basically go over to sales and marketing, take all of the requirements of what our customers want, write them into beautiful specification documents, and then ship them off to the engineers. And I said, okay, I can do that. And I got to work. And I started writing these specification documents, writing out all the requirements for what we were going to build, and I got really, really good at this. In fact, I was so good that I wrote a 21-page document for changing your password. And I was told that I was the best product manager because I was so detailed in all these specification documents that I never had to talk to the developers. And that was seen as a good thing. So here I am thinking, awesome, I got this, right? I am the best product manager that there is. So I went on with my career, and eventually I switched jobs. And I went to a smaller company where I was working with these developers who were awesome. They were all about open source code, and they were really big in the community. And I was told by the CTO to get started, go build my specification documents. So I did. So I went down, I started working on our first document, I wrote it all up, I shipped it off to the engineers. And I waited about 3 weeks for it to come back. And when it came back, I was like, this isn't what I asked you to build at all, right? Like, this is wrong, this whole page is wrong. Like, didn't you guys actually read my document? I specified it all in that. And they went, oh, that thing? Yeah, I didn't read that. It was like 35 pages long. I'm not going to read that. And now I'm having a crisis because if I was supposed to be the best specification writer, right, make it all detailed, and they weren't going to listen to me, who was I, right? Like, what is my purpose in life? Who am I supposed to be? And we got into these fights, right? Me and my developers, we were not getting along. We were not friends. And I'd be like, build my things, and they'd be like, no. And we were just at a standoff trying to figure out how do we work together. And one of the guys on our team, his name was Jared, he said, hey, I'm not just a developer. I was brought in to do this thing called Agile. So let's try this thing called Scrum and see if we start working better together. And I said, you know what? Anything is better at this point. We hate each other. Can't get worse than this. Let's give it a shot. So we learned Scrum. All right, the basic Scrum. We learned all about our product backlog. We started working in 2-week sprints. We started getting into our meetings where we're refining everything. And we got into this groove where we started working really well together. We started talking to each other. I asked their opinions. They gave me answers. They started building things that I asked for. And we became a really awesome team. So I became a huge fan of Agile. I said, this is great. I love the way we work together. Let's continue doing this. So we started getting the harder projects at work. So our CEO would be like, go build this. You guys are a rock star team. Go build all our things. And at one point, he came to us and he said, I want to build this whole e-commerce center for some of our sellers. So I was at a company called OpenSky, which actually just got bought by Alibaba. And we had these celebrity curators on our site. So people like Martha Stewart, Bobby Flay, they'd pick out things that they wanted to sell to their audience, and we split the profits. So we would go out, do all the sourcing, try to figure out what to put onto the site. They would promote it, And a lot of people use this as a business, right? So many of our sellers actually made a lot of money off this, and they wanted to know how their business was doing, which sounds logical. We didn't have that. We didn't have that built. So our CEO said, okay guys, you're gonna go make these dashboards, you're gonna help to inform the sellers about what we build. We said, great. So I started doing all the things I was taught. I went to the sellers, I asked them, what do you want? They gave me a list of requirements. We started breaking them down, designing the dashboards, and putting them into the sprints. And after about 3 months, we went to the people and we said, hey, look at this. It's everything you ever wanted. All the dashboards, all the numbers, everything you asked for. It's amazing, right? And they were like, yeah, this is good, awesome. So I said, fantastic. And I started to watch Google Analytics. So it was the first time I had ever put Google Analytics or any kind of data onto my products. So I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I'm watching. And the first day I see 20 people log in. I'm like, yes, okay, got them. The next day I see 10 people log in. And then people stop logging in. And I went, what's going on? Like, guys, I just gave you everything you wanted. You told us you wanted this. And they went, this? I don't want all of this stuff. There's too much. I know I said I wanted revenue, but I really want profit. I know I said I want to see every tweet, but I don't really care about that. So now I'm having a crisis again. Like, if my users haven't been using what I actually built, what am I doing, right? What's my purpose? And this is when I started to realize that we were stuck in something called the build trap. And it's this scary place where lots of companies get stuck. And it's when you build feature after feature after feature, and you never stop to think about, are my people actually using this? Is this really what customers want? And tons of companies are stuck there today. I've worked with hundreds of companies up to this point, and we get to this phase so often. So we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? Right? How do we all get stuck building feature after feature after feature? And I think it comes back to this. We started to look at businesses and say, the more ideas, the more requirements, the faster you code, the more money we make. And businesses started to look at this as a linear equation, right? Do this, make that faster, and profit, right? 1, 2, profit. And that's not really the case, though. But what happens when we think this way is that we keep adding and adding to these backlogs, but we don't take things away. So our products become these hodgepodge of complexity, right? Where what started as a copier became a printer, and then it was a scanner, and then we just said, well, I'll shove a stapler in there, and it doesn't work, right? And that's why this is still relevant from 1999. So how did we get here, right? What really happened here? I think it was really fascinating. I was at Mind the Product conference quite a few years ago, very large product conference, about this size, in San Francisco. And I was sitting with Jeff Patton, who is famous for user story mapping. Anybody read user story mapping before? Yeah. So Jeff and I are sitting there together, and there's a speaker who gets up, and he goes, oh, I'm not even going to talk about Agile. And everybody in the audience starts snickering. They're like, and he goes, okay, I will talk about Agile. I hate Agile. Agile only cares about story points and velocity. And 1,400 people stood up and were like, yes, thank you, and applauded. And Jeff and I looked at each other and went, oh my God, like, that's not good. If 1,400 product managers are here hating Agile, what happened? And to me, this was weird because I had a great experience with Agile. So I started to think about what happened. How did we get stuck just thinking about velocity and story points and more is better? And what we really fail to realize when we think about Agile is that Scrum doesn't have a brain. So companies adopt our Agile processes, they adopt Scrum, and they think it's gonna solve all of their problems. But Scrum doesn't have a brain. And what I mean by that is that Scrum can teach you how to work well as a team, but it will not teach you what to build. It cannot tell you if you're building the right thing. It only teaches you how to work well together and to get things out the door faster. So we need more than Agile, and we need to educate ourselves in these companies about what Agile really is. So we go and we hire these people, or we turn into product owners. And a lot of companies will have massive amounts of product owners. They take people, they say, you are now a product owner, congratulations. And they tell them to go manage the backlog and get out there. But what we're not doing is building that foundation of product management, right? So we have to remember that product owner is just a role you play on a Scrum team. But take Scrum away. What if you use a different process, right? What if you're going to go to Kanban? What if you adopt whatever's coming out next year, because we're going to change this every single year? What if you take Scrum away? You still are a product manager, and you have to remember that. And we have to build the foundation of great product management in our companies in order to be successful. So I like to describe product management as this. We've got customers on one side, we've got our businesses on the other. And our customers have problems, wants, and needs that they need fulfilled. And our businesses provide those products or services to fill those things. But it's not until these problems go away, these wants are fulfilled, or those needs go away, that the customer actually realizes value, right? There is no value in the product itself if it does not solve a problem. So once we give value to the customer, they give value back, and that's how we maximize business value. So the purpose of a product manager and product management is to figure out what are those products and services that are going to maximize both customer value and business value, and how do we build those? How do we get those out to our customers? So we need to remember that solving big problems for customers creates big value for our businesses. That's why we're here. That's why we're all here today, is to solve problems for our customers. So we need to put in place an organization that will allow us to do that. So when we think about product management foundations, there's 3 parts to it. There's the strategy, so what should we build and why? There's the process, how do we actually go about building that? And then there's the organization, so how do we lay the foundation to build great product management? How do we build that into our culture and the way that we scale our teams? So let's start with strategy. I was working at a meal kit delivery company as the interim product lead there. And the idea with this company is that you sign up online, they would send you a box of ingredients, recipes to your door, you pull them out, you cook it, you got a great home-cooked meal. And when I came in, they had a very clear goal to double acquisition. They said, we need to double our rate of acquisition, get more people in the door, then we'll be good. So we start getting to work. We're trying to figure out, why are people not signing up? And we're sitting there with our team one day in a room, and the CTO barges in. He's brand new, and he sits down and he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is your product strategy? I said, what do you mean? Like, we're about to go talk to customers, we're trying to figure out why they're not signing up. And he goes, no. I want a document with every single field that you intend to put on the website so that I can build a content strategy in the back end, and that's what I need. So give me a document, give me the 40 pages, go build that. And I was like, that's not a strategy, because we don't even know what problem we're solving yet. So most product strategies you see in companies are exactly this. They're a wish list of features, right? And then what we do with those features, well, we take them and then we shove it into a Gantt chart. And then we make up numbers about when it's going to get released, and it's all made up, right? Because nobody can actually predict that. So most roadmaps, we have our Gantt charts, we've got this wish list. How are we actually supposed to build it? What these things fail to realize is that these processes are not built around uncertainty. So when we create new products, there's massive amount of uncertainty. We have to ask ourselves, what problem is the customer solving? Who are my customers? What can I do better today? How are they using my product? Is this the right solution? How should it be delivered? We have to answer so many questions before we can decide what to do. So our product strategy needs to enable us to tackle that uncertainty, to figure out what it is we actually should build. So product strategy is not a plan. It's not build this feature, then that feature, and then ship it out. Product strategy needs to be a framework. So Stephen Bungay, who wrote the book The Art of Action, has one of the best definitions for this. He says, product strategy is a deployable decision-making framework, enabling action to achieve desired outcomes, constrained by our current capabilities, and coherently aligned to the existing context. So that's a mouthful. What does he mean? He's saying product strategy is a framework. It's a framework that should allow people to make decisions, right? You should allow your teams to figure out what solutions should I be building, right? And we should be looking at where we are now, where we want to go, and then making choices about how we want to get there. Not go build one, then go build this, then go build that. So what does that look like? In companies we work with, this is the framework that we try to put out. We say, first, there's the vision. This is where the company's going. This is what we want to be in 5 to 10 years, right? Long-term thinking, what do we want to be? The CEO and senior leadership sets that. Second is strategic intents. So strategic intents are about business challenges. Do I want to enter this new market? Do I want to expand geographically? Do I want to move from serving lower level companies to mid-market companies to enterprises, right? What decisions do I want to make? Do I want to focus on retention? Do I want to focus on pricing and packaging, right? Where do I focus as a business on my revenue and my cost? That's what senior leadership and your business leads are looking at. Now we're getting down into the product portfolio. What should we build? So then we look at our products and we say, okay, what problems can we solve for our customers through our products to reach those business goals? And those become the product initiatives. And they should be large, meaty things that are focused on problems for customers. Then we go to the teams and we say, okay, what are our options to solve those problems? What solutions could we build? And there should be more than one option. It shouldn't just be build that feature. It should be, is this the right feature to build, or should we go in a different direction? That's where our teams are really experimenting and trying to figure out what to do. So when you have good product strategy and good strategy deployment, that's where we really can start focusing on what our customers want and what value we provide. So when we went back to that CTO and he asked, what is your product strategy? This is what we told him. We said, as a company, we are trying to figure out how to differentiate. So how do we differentiate ourselves in the meal kit delivery market? The senior leadership and the CEO said, in 5 years, our company will be the meal kit with the most choices and convenience in the market. So there was competitors like Blue Apron that had 4 or 5 choices. He said, no, I want many choices, I want convenience. These are the 2 differentiations that we really want to focus on. Then we looked at our strategic intent and we said, okay, it's going to be to double acquisition and maintain our current retention rate, which was very high, by the end of 2016. Now our team is set up well to go figure out how to do that. So when you have great strategy like this, right, that's how you get alignment. And what product leaders do is provide that vision, those goals, and those guardrails to the team. So they're focusing on the higher level stuff. They're not looking at the nitty-gritty details. They're like, what's the high-level goals so that I can enable my team to go out there? And when you have good strategy up and down, you get alignment with your teams. When I go in and do consulting, one of the big things that we do is we go to all the teams and we ask them, what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And then we go to the next level and we go all the way up to the CEO. And you find that a lot of people are not giving you the same answer. The CEO thinks they're doing it for one reason, the teams don't know why they're doing the things they're doing, and that really shows that there's a lack of strategy deployment. So if there's no alignment, you don't get the benefits of producing great software, you don't get the value, you don't realize the business value. So what you get instead is a bunch of teams running around, shipping features as fast as they can, but you don't see any metrics move. No goals are hit, no metrics move. But lots and lots of features are coming out the door. So, to escape the build trap, we have to drive high alignment through a good strategy framework that allows teams to make decisions. We got to push decision-making down to our product managers. We hire people because they're smart. We want them to go do good work, and we want them to make decisions. That's how we scale our companies, and that's how we make great products. So product strategy emerges from experimentation. You don't just set product strategy and say, well, I think we should double acquisition. Sounds good. Bye. Right? You're going to be looking at how do we figure out what's the right thing to build here? How do I know if I'm hitting the right targets? And what are the problems I'm solving? So to do that, we need the right process. We need to really understand how can we go figure out what's the right product to hit those strategic intents. So when I came into this company, everybody had a ton of ideas. We sat there, I remember sitting at this long table, bunch of people around, head of marketing, head of sales, head of food, product managers, everybody. We're saying, what should we do? What can we do to double acquisition? And some people were saying, the price is too high. We were a premium product. We were more expensive than our competitors. So they said, oh, the price is too high, we should lower it. But the CEO is like, no, that cuts into our margins. How can we do that? We had other people saying, oh, the photos are not enticing. We have a picture of a steak on our website. Vegetarians are scared of that. Let's get rid of the steak. Right? That was a legitimate concern. We need to rebrand the sign-up funnel to the new design. That's what our head of design said. And one of my personal favorites was the head of marketing saying, you know what will work? Let's put a chef's knife in the box. If we put free knives in the box, everybody will sign up. And I was like, that sounds very dangerous. I don't think that's our problem right there. So lots of ideas, but what's the problem? The problem is we don't know what the problem is. We don't know why people aren't signing up. These are great solutions to a problem that we don't know. So we had to take a step back. And what our team did was really look at and try to diagnose where is the problem, right? Is it awareness? They don't know about us? Is it they don't understand us? Like where is this coming from? So we looked at the funnel for people signing up, right? Typical e-commerce funnel. We saw tons of people are coming to the site. They're taking the first sign-up step. They're taking the second sign-up step. And then they're dropping off. And they were dropping off at the address step, not the credit card or payment. They already knew how much it cost. It wasn't at payment yet. It's just this weird in-between step. And I was like, that's weird. Why would that happen? But we also looked and saw that if we increase the conversion rate of people in the funnel, if we fix that funnel, we'd be able to hit our goals. So our product strategy, right, our initiative became to increase conversion rate across all our platforms by a certain percentage by the end of Q2. That's what we were trying to do, and that's what my team was doing. So now we had to ask ourselves how. How do we increase our conversion rate? How do we get there? So we had an obstacle. We don't know why people aren't signing up. Now, lots of people are coming to the site, but we don't have their email addresses and we don't have their phone numbers. So I don't know how to ask them, why didn't you sign up? And at the time, too, we tried putting email as the first step, and we lost a ton of people, right? Everybody dropped, so we said, nope, we're going to put that back. Don't affect sales. So we're trying to figure out, how do we get in touch with people? And our developer on my team, he goes, hey, Melissa, I found this thing called Koala Room. And what happens is when people start going towards the back button or exit, it slides up and it goes, what's stopping you from signing up today? I said, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's great. Let's put it on there. He said, it'll take me 5 minutes. Let's give it a shot. We didn't know if it was going to work. We actually argued for about 5 minutes about whether there should be a survey or an open text field. And he was like, I could fix it in 3 seconds. Let's just put it up. We put it up. All right. So we're watching, right? 1 week, we had 2,000 responses. And nobody said they wanted a knife in their box. What they did say, though, was that they could not find out what food we served. Pretty basic, right? Like, they just didn't have the basic information about what we did. So 33% of people are going, I can't find the menu. Where is the menu? Where are the food that you actually serve? One guy actually wrote in that text field, he's like, show me a steak, get me excited about it, and then don't tell me if I can get the steak. And then 3 seconds later, he's like, oops, sorry, I didn't realize this was a text box, found the menu, right? He's just like, oh. So people were like confused. They were like, what do we serve? Another like 20-something percent, 25% were like, what's in the box? How does this work? Do I need to buy an egg? Do I need to buy salt? Do I get everything? Right? So how do you work? A couple people said the price is too high, but because we use that open text field, I could see it saying, why do you cost more than others? So there's a value question there, not necessarily a price question. Like, how do you justify being more money than the other ones? And then also, I want more plans. So I have a family, I want to feed a family, I want more than 2 options here. You give them 2 plates normally, they're like, I want 3, I want 4. So now that we know what we're doing and what the problem is, we have to ask ourselves, how do we fix it? So now our obstacle is people can't find the menu. And we did have a menu page, it lived on the site, But the problem was it was hidden under a hamburger menu. And only 3% of people actually clicked on that menu. So 3% of people. So what happened is they got into the sign-up funnel trying to find more information. They were like, what's happening? Where's the menu? What's the menu? And that's how we got people falling off on that step. So we ran a test. We said, let's A/B test this. Let's run it real fast. Figure out if we show the menu, does it increase some conversions? Had a bunch of arguments with the head of design who said, no, it will ruin our flow. This was one beautiful long scroll page with beautiful branding. She was like, it'll complicate it. And I said, I don't care. Let's see what happens. So we tested this. We only had 3 pages. This, like I said, long scroll page, not many pages. So I put FAQs and help up there because they were on Zendesk, and we had the menus page. Within 3 weeks, we almost doubled conversion with a test. Right? That was what the problem was. So we knew we were on the right path. We knew what the problem was and how to solve it now. So we left that up and we iterated and we put more information on the top. We solved their problems of how does it work, what are the menus, and then why do you cost more, what are your quality? And by doing that, conversion skyrocketed and they were able to double their acquisition. They went beyond it. They had a really nice exit to a grocery chain and it was very successful. So our product strategy ended up looking like this. Our options that we looked was that clearer experience for users with value explanation, and then we also did introduce things like family plans so that you can get more than 2 plates. So by really taking a step back and figuring out what is the problem and what's the right way to solve it, we got to our goal, and we got there much faster than people expected. So to escape the build trap, we need to use the right processes and tools at the right time. Had we gone and built that specification document that the CTO wanted, we would not have achieved our goals. So in product management and in companies, we get really excited by tools. We're like, prototype all the things, right? Design sprint all the things, like use all the tools. And what happens is we stop thinking about what's the right tool at the right time, right? What should we be using and why are we actually using this? So we have to remember that tools are useless unless you use them correctly, right? For the right time. So as cool as they are, they may not be the right tool to actually use. So one thing that we teach all of our product managers is something that I call the product kata. And the product kata is a systematic way of thinking to teach you about what you should be using and what problem you're solving. So what you do is you start off by saying, okay, what's our company goal, what's our product KPI, and what's our future state? So just like on the strategy canvas, that could be what's my strategic intent, what's my vision, where am I going? Then we look at where are we now? So what are users doing now? How are they interacting with things? What are their problems? Then we set the first little goal. So we want to change this behavior to that behavior. We want to get to this goal. Then we look at the problem and what we need to learn, and then we start to pick the right tool. If I don't know what the problem is, I'm doing user research. If I know what the problem is and I'm testing solution ideas, I'm doing prototypes. If I am trying to experiment and learn if it's the right thing, I'm running an MVP test. I am doing concierge. So when we think this way, we start to get into a habit of saying, let me take a step back, look at where I am, look at what the problem is I'm solving, and make sure I'm doing the right next step to get to the solution. And this becomes a habit, right? And what the habit teaches you is about learning. So this whole thing is about learning. And learning about your customers, about your business, that's really what reduces uncertainty. And that's what we have to remember at the end of the day. The more we learn as product managers, the more we reduce that uncertainty. And what that does is lowers the risk of failure, that we put out the wrong product, that we waste all of our time building the wrong thing, and that's a good thing for companies. So we really want to focus on learning. And to do that, we need to build discovery and delivery into our processes. You can't just have sprint 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you never stop sprinting, right? You got to actually take a step back and say, hey, maybe this week we got to do user research. Maybe that week we're going to do a prototype instead. It's not always about building. We also have to learn. So in order to do that, we need to build an organization that really rewards learning, right? It focuses on reducing that risk and reducing that uncertainty and figuring it out what we should build. So let's go back to the mind the product topic, right? Why does everybody hate Agile? Where are we coming from? Well, I always didn't understand this with product managers, and especially that reaction, because when I read the Agile Manifesto, and if you click on the second page, this is what it says on the top. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So to me, Agile and product management shouldn't be at odds, right? They should be something that works together. But we get stuck in the motion where we don't actually think about this. And we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we forget about what the customer wants? And that first principle of Agile, satisfying the customer. The reason we get here is because we focus more on doing the process right than building the right things. We're like, can we do our stand-up well? Can I get my backlog longer? Am I writing the user story in the exact right format? Am I putting it into Jira correctly? I hate Jira. Jira has ruined product management. So we focus on all these things and we don't go, is this the right thing, right? We get into the weeds of how we do our work instead of what does that result in. And because of that, we're really not focusing on outcomes. So we need to remember that outcomes are what we're all trying to get to, and outcomes over output, over the output of the features we put there. Are we hitting those goals that we actually outlined? So when companies don't focus on this, they build and they launch, but they never measure success. Output-focused companies are like, did you ship that feature? Good. Promotion, right? This is how we think when we think about outputs. We don't really look at what do these things release. I go into so many places and I ask them, how do you measure success? How will you know that by shipping this thing, you are successful? And they can't give me an answer. And that's because we're not really looking at what's the value that we're producing from these features, from these products. So instead, we end up as a conveyor belt, shipping out features, shoving them in, going as fast as possible in these companies, not really sure what it's amounting to. So we have to think about success of our products too, and I think it really gets into how we measure success of our company, right? How we measure success of launch internally. So Jeff Patton, again, who I mentioned, he does this really fun thing at workshops, which I totally stole and do it at my workshops too. And he has people line up across the room, and he says, if your last product launch was a total failure, go over there. If it was really, really awesome, go over there. And what happens is you get about 20% of people in awful, about 20% of people in awesome, and then about 60% of people are in what I call the valley of meh. And the valley of meh is like, I don't know, I didn't get fired, so I guess it was all right. It's true, that's what people say. They're like, I don't know. And it's because we're not really measuring success there. And this to me is really interesting because I work with lots of large corporations. Who works with a large corporation? Large companies? Yeah, a couple of you. Okay, so when I go into large companies, they're basically saying, hey, I want to think like a startup, right? And I think this is where we get large companies not understanding what startups are doing. Because in a large company, success is anything that wasn't awful, right? As long as you didn't release like 50,000 or 50 million social security numbers, you're doing all right, right? But in startups, success is completely the opposite. If you are not hitting every goal, if you're not shipping valuable things constantly, you will not be successful because you don't have the money to sustain all that failure, right? When you run out of that capital, you're done. So anything less than the best will kill a startup. And that's a mentality we need to really remain competitive, right? That's why it's so important for us to actually measure success, because we want to make sure that things are actually producing value. And that's what we need to bake into our company culture. So company leaders really need to pull themselves up and focus on these two things in order to define that success, that vision and their strategic intents. And too many leaders get into the weeds and start going, did you ship it? Did you ship it? What's your story points? How many story points did you do last week? Oh, 40? I don't know. 40 isn't good, right? And they get into this habit of digging into the weeds and looking at all those things, and they forget that the most important thing they could do is define what success looks like. That's how we make great companies and great organizations. So to escape the build trap, we need to create a product-led organization that has policies and practices needed to navigate uncertainty and make strategic decisions. So we have to build that into our organization so that we can do all these things. So one of the things that we do for organizations, especially at scale, as you're scaling up from growth stage into larger corporations, is build something called product operations. What product operations does is it allows you to get the data and the insights you need to make decisions at scale. So you've got your business and data insights. That's basically collecting and analyzing the internal data, your revenue, your cost, your usage, your retention numbers, like all the numbers you can get internally, and surfacing them back up to the product teams so that the product teams can go, oh, it's working, or nope, we have to change that. Getting data is one of the hardest things for product managers. Every company that I go to, when I ask product managers and I say, what could make you more successful? Data always comes back as number one issue. I can't get the data. I can't find out what my users are actually doing. So that's why it's so important. The second piece is customer and market insights. So how do we figure out what our customers want? How do we get feedback? And how do we synthesize that into something that product managers can actually use? Sometimes we have tons of salespeople taking calls, but all that information doesn't come back to the teams about what we can do. And the last piece is our process and practices. So how do we scale our value with consistent processes and practices so that we can all work together as a team? So when we use data, we need data to answer really important questions. So every person should ask themselves, every product leader especially should say, which products and segments are the most profitable? Which features are driving sales and adoption by segment? Which products have the most time invested in bug fixes? At a leadership level, if we can't answer these questions, or you can't answer these questions about a product, it's hard to make decisions about strategy, about where we should focus. And so many companies are operating off of gut instead of actual data around these things. So that's why we build these product operations pieces in. So we start to automate this and facilitate this into third-party tools. We use things like Tableau or whatever BI tool you have out there, and we start to plug in things from Bamboo or Salesforce or Amplitude and Gainsight and Jira and Aha. And if you pull those into the right mixes, you could start to look at where you are and how do I make decisions. So that's a step one of really scaling a great product organization, is putting all the data at your fingertips so that you can look at it and make decisions. So this becomes a self-serving thing where we're giving executive visibility into what is happening with our products. They can set the right vision and strategic intents and the strategy. Our team now knows what we're doing and where we're going, so we could start to bubble up options. And now we have some predictability about what's actually going to happen when we look at those things. So this starts to feed into itself, and it starts to make a more well-run product organization. The next part, too, is customer and market insights. So this is places where we would do things like building a participant database. Many of the large companies or enterprises I've worked with, they don't want their people talking to customers, and that's my biggest fight. I'm like, you must allow your product managers to talk to customers. That is their job. That's why they're here. Let them go talk to customers. But what they're scared of is that many people, when you have 350 to 2,000 product managers, which I've seen, if they're all going after the same customer or the same company to talk to, they could bother them, right? So what do? You have to create systems to share information and to really manage that. So at a large-scale company, we built something called a participant database. And in that database, we had all of our customers opt in to if they wanted to do experiments or user research or any of those things. And then we tracked who talked to them. We also had different research tools available, things to do prototyping. We put a findings database together where all of the interviews and other results went into something that everybody could see, so that you're not interviewing the same people about the same problem all the time. We also had sales and support feedback. So sales was able to talk to product managers and say, this is working, this is not working, but not in a hostile way, not in a, you failed me and I couldn't sell anything. It was like, here's the feedback. right? And when we do this, and we have market research reports as well. So when we do this, we're bringing the external into us to really understand what are our customers doing, what are our users doing, so we can make better decisions at scale. Lastly, we have to facilitate standardizing templates, right? So how do we make sure that we're all speaking the same language, especially at scale? That's where we look at having similar formats for roadmaps, doing things like product briefs, right? Amazon has that famous 3-page memo that they did. The reason they did that is because when you have 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 product teams, you need to, one, have a simple way for everybody to be speaking the same language, and two, make it possible for product managers to move from team to team so they don't get bored. If you had to relearn your entire job every team that you went to, you'd be exhausted. You'd leave pretty quickly. So that's why we have to figure out what's the right thing to standardize. And we don't want to over-standardize. We don't want everything to be the same, but some things need to be the same to facilitate people moving. So that's where this comes in. That's where you get your agile coaches, your product coaches, to really help figure out what are we going to do here. So product is one of the few departments in all of our companies that touches everything, right? We look at revenue, we look at costs, we look at profitability, we look at how are things positioned in the market. Is my value proposition resonating, right? How can I do operations well? Can I deliver on the things that I'm actually promising our customers? What's my profitability of what I'm putting out there? What is the cost of it? Is the design right? Can the users use it? Can it actually promote more value through the user experience design? Can we build it? Is the technology possible? And then also sales. Can we sell it? What do we predict? What do people need? So our role is incredibly critical for companies, right? Because we pull all of that together. And while marketing is looking at its silo, and sales is in its silo, and tech is in its silo, we bring everybody together. And that's why it's such a critical role. That's also why we need strong leadership. Typically, we haven't had product in leadership positions sitting with the C-suite. And you're seeing that change now very drastically. So we need more chief product officers. And the problem that we see in the market right now is that product management is fairly new. So there's not a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time. This is the most in-demand role. I hired something like 24 chief product officers in the last 2 years. It is super in demand. More people are we were trying to find more product managers. Every company is going to need a CPO one day. So you have to think to yourselves too, as product managers, right? This is why you're here. This is why you're at Product Camp learning these things so that you can go build great product organizations and great product strategy for these companies. And this is not going away. So product management is a C-suite, C-level position. And it helps us figure out how do we scale through software? How do we build great organizations and great products as more and more companies are turning to software? So as a CPO, we really need to build that organization, right, of great operations, great data, so that people can make decisions. We need to set great strategy, right? Figure out what direction we're going in. And we need to have a great process for doing that. How do we experiment that way? But none of this is possible without the people, right? Without you all sitting in this audience today. These are all things that you can do or contribute to when you go back to work, right? You have the ability to start questioning why you're building the things you're building. You have the ability to start measuring success and defining it. So I encourage you to all go back to work after this and really think about getting out of the build trap, because it's a very comfortable place to stay in. So thank you very much for listening. So I believe we're going to do a few questions. If you want the slides, email productslabs@sendyourslides.com. Put in the subject Brazil. It will automatically send it to you. And then you don't have to email me. If you would like to buy the book, Escaping the Build Trap, on Amazon, it's up there. Also, we have an online school called Product Institute, where we train, we've had over 4,000 product managers go through it, where we train people in great product management. And you can follow me on Twitter @LisseyJean. And now we're going to do questions. What do we got?
Thank you. Bom, pessoal, quiser fazer perguntas, fique à vontade. É o link que está aí nas costas das cadeiras. First question. Can you elaborate more on why Jira is ruining product management? What other tools would you rather use?
What other tools? Okay, so it's the format that we put things in with product management. So with Jira, I mean. So Jira has a very specific way of how do you write user stories and how does that ladder up to epics. And especially when we're taught Scrum in Jira, I have a ton of teams that I teach user story mapping. And we lay out like user stories underneath it. But what Jira does, or what you're learning through Agile and Jira, is that you cannot work on anything unless it's in a user story. So then I get teams that write, as a user, I would like this dashboard to work because it's broken. That's a bug. Like, you should not have to worry about writing that into a user story format, right? But instead, many of the places that I go to and I train product managers, our conversation gets away from, like, how do we do product management, and more of, how do I put this inside Jira? Because I can't figure out how to use it in the way that you're doing it. So we've confined it there. I think it's just teaching us a bad habit of how to do things. Like, not everything needs to be a user story. Tasks for developers do not have to be user stories. It's just a weird format for putting it in, and we get so really caught up in writing it the perfect way, clicking the right button, that we don't really think about what we're putting in there. And that's for any tool. That's not just Jira. Jira just happens to be the biggest one, but that's any tool out there. If you're worried more about using the tool than you are about what goes into the tool, then we have a problem.
Of all the skills a product manager needs to have, which one you think it's the most important?
Communication. I think product management skills with communication is definitely the most important. Like, your job is basically to take all this information. What's my market data? What's my customer data? What's my current business state? What can technology do? What do we currently have? And then synthesize it into something that's a proposal, right? Like a go-forward plan. And then you got to go get buy-in. You got to go to your teams, your stakeholders, and you have to say, I think we should go this way. And communicating that story, right? Everything you learned and how you got to that point and why you should be doing what you're doing, that's really what I see make or break product managers. If you can't communicate your story, you might be really good at product strategy, you might be really good at working with developers, but if you can't get that buy-in and you can't change your story depending on your audience, that's where I see most product managers struggle. And that can make all the difference.
Good. We have a question about buy-in. How to get the buy-in for the product mindset in a company that's project-based?
Ooh, so many project-based companies. Yeah, so typically the first thing that we would look at is first defining your product portfolio. So most project-based companies haven't actually sat down and went, okay, what do we actually build, right? What are our products? So that's where I would start. Get people to start to define what the product is, because if you could talk about the product and say, is that still going to be around and are people still going to use it in 5 years or 2 years or 6 months? And people say yes. Now you have a conversation about, okay, so when we finish this project, how are we going to make sure that product is still good and people still like it? And that starts to shift people's perceptions. They're like, huh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Like, who is overseeing that, right? Who's on top of that product and making sure it's still working? And that opens up the conversation really to get people there. So I start with defining the product portfolio, and then the other one is measuring success, right? How do you know by building this product it's going to be worth it?
Okay, we have time for a quick last question. How did you convince the CDO that you did not need to work on a massive list of specifications? How do we convince C-level that we need to work differently and not measured by features deployed?
For me, it was showing them the data of what happened. Like, I was stuck in that position, and I had to go get buy-in to do these experiments. And luckily, the first time I did it, it worked out really well. But what I showed them was all the data about what was going wrong. And I said, we have to change. But when you don't measure success, you can't show them that. So write down, I went back to the CEO every time he told me to build something, and I said, what do you think is going to happen when I build this, right? Like, what are you trying to change? What am I being measured for success on from a data perspective? And we write those down, and then I go build it his way, and then when I ship it, we look at it together. And he started to see feature after feature wasn't hitting the numbers he thought it was actually going to hit. And that's when they started to say, we should be doing something different. I believe data changes everything. Like having data, measuring success, like really being able to look at that, it makes your life so much easier as a product manager. So I really, even if your company doesn't measure success, you can still measure success. You define success, and people will start to say, yeah, that's right, or no, that's not right. But it starts the dialogue.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, everyone.